Okay, I don't admit to doing it, but we do have fun. Welcome to Morningside and our final look at nostalgia. Today we're going to take a look at the 60s. The book I'm holding is called Rock On, and it's somewhat of an encyclopedia of rock and roll. It documents the groups and the individuals who've been recording stars throughout the years. And with us today is a man who happened to write the book. His name is Norman Nite, and he's our music expert. He's a disc jockey at WCBS. How'd you find the time to take off from your DJ work? Because I enjoy this. I like this kind of thing, to be able to look back and say, hey, that guy was from Philadelphia, or whatever happened to the Flamingos, or
Right.
Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, though she's coming back.
Right. Well, as far as taking the time off, I work evenings, 6 to 10 p.m. in New York. So I woke up this morning, the earliest I've been up in years to come on down. But it's a pleasure to be with you, Edie.
Let the Mike Douglas Show make your day. Hi, everybody. This is Wolfman Jack, and I'm Mike's co-host as we remember the golden days of rock and roll.
We've been reliving a lot of memories with all these folks today, but let me tell you something. When it comes to rock and roll of the 50s and 60s, this man sitting next to me has the goods on all of us. He's a disc jockey with NBC Radio and the author of Rock On. Lay some facts on us. Start with the Shirelles. Tell me something about the Shirelles.
Tell stories about them all. Well, the Shirelles have got to be a premier group because they were the girls that really started it all before, you know, when you had Diana Ross and Supremes, the Marvelettes and all that. These girls were the first to really come out and get this whole thing with the female popular groups. They're probably the foremost as far as starting it all. So the Shirelles here have been a very, very successful group, and the first, that I would say, as far as the business goes. They really have been.
Welcome to the Mike Douglas Show. Hello, I'm Neil Sedaka, and I'm Mike's co-host all this week. With us on our show will be Jose Feliciano, from American Bandstand, Dick Clark. We'll have the music of Teresa Brewer, The Angels, Joey D and the Starlighters, and Norm N. Knight will tell us about the fabulous 50s.
This next guest was with us just a few weeks ago. He's really got the whole lowdown on the 50s and 60s, and he's a disc jockey with NBC Radio and the author of Rock On, the illustrated history of rock and roll. Here's Norm N. White.
You did it again tonight. I did it again.
Norm N.
And Norman Knight was the first one to play Laughter in the Rain. I'll never forget that. That's it.
I'll tell you something. It was very interesting. I was talking to Neil's lovely wife, Leva, backstage. And 5 years ago, when I was working in Cleveland at a radio station there, Neil had an opportunity to come in and do a show with us. And we were sitting back there before the show went on, and he was having an opportunity to talk about how he'd really like to be able to make it big, and he's been doing it in London, and he just was looking for that break to come. And he was with a good friend of ours, Dick Fox, a friend of his, and he said, you know, I really want to make it. And Leva told me, I didn't realize this, that, well, you were there that time. We were both exchanging ideas on what we wanted to become as far as career-wise, that he was getting a telephone call from Elton John. So your wife told me that he was trying to locate you. He was appearing or something.
That's right.
And that was the man, Elton John, by signing Neil to Rocket Records. And then the whole thing happened, and all of a sudden, talent, you know, it's there. All it has to be is, you know, get the right break again. And
That's right.
It happened all over again.
This next gentleman is one of New York City's hottest disc jockeys. He appears nightly on WNBC AM in that town. He is also unquestionably the greatest chronicler of contemporary music to date, having written this book called Rock On, and it's subtitled An Encyclopedia, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll. Please welcome the man who's known as Mr. Music, Norm N. Knight. said, no, it's Norm N. Nite.
You know, it's the funniest thing, Dinah, when people get into radio, there's always a thing with a pseudonym, a gimmick, a name and a whole thing. And a while back when I had to choose a pseudonym for myself, I was just thinking of something that would be different, so it's just the spelling and the way you remember it, that's all.
If you'd made it day and night, you could have been on. But I just want to read one review for our audience, or an appraisal, critique of the book. I knew there was a word for it. That says, if I were half as serious a student about the world of rock, if I had more attention span than that of the average flea, I'd have done it myself. This is the research we needed. This is the encyclopedia. This is the definitive study. Thank you for putting it all together for all of us who love rock and roll. Signed, Dick Clark.
My stage manager just said, you can't hear yourself think in this place tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is making his third appearance, I believe, in a Tomorrow program. 3 more than we booked him for. An old friend, a major figure here in New York radio, Mr. Norman Nite. Norm is a disc jockey and radio personality on station WNBC, the mighty 66 here in Gotham. All right. He is the author of a book on rock and roll. This man has put together a veritable encyclopedia on the history of rock and roll, going all the way back to the early 1950s, which is called Rock On, now available in paperback at a reduced price. We call this man Mr. Music, and a few other things not to be repeated here. Norman, welcome back.
NBC News presents a special report on the life and times of Elvis Presley. Here is NBC News correspondent David Brinkley.
Good evening. Television makes a lot of noise and fills up a lot of time with material good and bad, but it's on radio where popular musicians live or die. If their records get played on the radio, they can become famous and rich and buy 7 Cadillacs and 12 gold watches and mansions on the Pacific Ocean with a lot of girls around. Radio does that for them, not television. And so it was big news and bad news for people in radio when they heard about Elvis today. Here's Brian Ross.
On the air tonight in New York City and throughout the country, the music of Elvis Presley. Many radio stations dropped their regular record shows. Disc jockeys played only the many, many hits of Elvis and recalled some of his great performances.
He wore a tuxedo, and he was singing to a dog on a little bit of a table. And a lot of people thought that it was kind of unique. The song became probably one of the biggest things that Elvis ever recorded. It became kind of like a byword for most teenagers of the time. Summertime of 1956 on NBC, Elvis Presley, one of his biggest all-time sellers.
You ain't nothing but a hound.